What's going on, guys? It's Zach here. Bring you guys another fantasy football video. This will be going over about 10 players that I've been looking to specifically buy low on ahead of week 10, and then I'll be going over players that I've been looking to specifically target in trades, sort of record dependent, based off of whether or not maybe you're 6-3, 7-2, really trying to position yourself to the playoffs, or maybe you're 4-5, 3-6, 2-7 potentially, and really just trying to put yourself in a position where you can win out the rest of the way. Make sure you get into those playoffs for sure. So obviously, all these trades are going to be super league and roster dependent as well. So if you guys have any specific questions, feel free to let me know in the comments. I love helping you guys make those trade decisions. So give you as much context as possible as well. It helps me give you the best advice that I can as well, for sure. So I really love making these videos. All of these players are players that I do specifically target in trades that I make across all of my leagues. So I really do put my money where my mouth is on all of these trades and all these players that I talk about here. So I'm not just giving you guys advice that I wouldn't follow myself. So as always, if there's any players that you felt like I messed up or sort of left off of these lists as well, feel free to let me know. If you want me to my opinions on any specific players as well, let me know in the comments. I love giving you guys my thoughts there, and truly love interacting with you guys and all that. So really appreciate you guys taking the time to watch these videos. I hope you're finding them useful. And with that, let's just get into the first player here. So start things off with Tony Pollard, and I know it's been really brutal for him so far this season, but I think that if you do need to win now, I think Tony Pollard is in a spot where he's going to rattle off a really great month over the next 4 weeks here. He plays the Giants, Panthers, Commanders, and Seahawks over the next stretch. Obviously, the playoff schedule isn't great, but he's got an elite role on a good offense. He's been statistically the least likely player in terms of touchdown production so far. He's got the most consecutive touches without scoring a touchdown at this point so far in the season. He hasn't scored a touchdown since week one, had one called back due to a questionable penalty this last week even. I still think he's a low-end running back one the rest of the season, and I just don't think he's going to cost you all that. Obviously, he hasn't lived up to the hype that we had for him coming into the season, but he's still a talented player on a really good offense. He's got an elite role. He's given that goal line and pass catching work. He's a guy that I still think is going to be a big time producer for us down the stretch, and I think he's never going to be cheaper than what he is right now. So that'd be a good time to kick the tires on Pollard for sure. Next player I want to bring up here is going to be Devonta Smith. We've seen that Devonta Smith's target share jumps by a ton actually when Dallas Goedert misses time. It jumped from 23 to 30% last season. This is basically going to be a two pass catcher offense over the next month with Dallas Goedert in line to miss a month with an elbow injury. This means really that fantasy managers that are in win now mode are probably going to have to consider selling Devonta Smith because he's on bye this week. If the manager with Devonta Smith is 3-6 or 4-5, you can easily sell to them that hey, you can't afford to lose this week, and I'll take Devonta Smith off your hands. I'll give you a wide receiver two for him. And if you're willing to eat that bye, if you're 6-3, 7-2, and in a really good spot here, then I think you can just sort of take the bye, eat the bad week here where he doesn't play for you, and then you're going to have low end wide receiver one production the rest of the season. He was obviously a really high end performer of the second half of last season, and it's really just lined up exactly the same way this season, where Dallas Goedert was eaten into his snaps just enough that he wasn't a reliable, consistent producer for your fantasy team. And now Dallas Goedert's going to miss time here, and it's going to make Devonta Smith a really consistent high-end option for us. So if you can get him on your roster, now is a great time to do that. Next, I do want to bring up Travis Kelce here, and I don't know if it's necessarily possible to buy low on a guy like Travis Kelce. Obviously, he's the tight end one for a reason. He's a high-end performer, and he's going to be generally untouchable for a lot of fantasy managers. But he's coming off of two disappointing weeks in a row. He only had six catches for 52 yards 2 weeks ago, and then he's come off of a three-catch, 14-yard game this last week. That's two straight weeks where he really didn't do anything to help fantasy managers with him, and now he's going to enter his bye week. So it's possible that the Travis Kelce manager in your league is struggling. Like I said, really similar to Devonta Smith. They could be in a position where they need to win this week, and Travis Kelce's not going to be here to help them do that. So he's obviously a guy that we know can be a league winner when he's healthy and when he's playing. He's going to be a guy that's obviously going to come out and play the second half of the season on a tear. This is going to be an offense that's really looking to get things right. They've got an elite matchup against Philadelphia in Week 11. That's going to be a team that should be able to score a lot of points against the Chiefs, and they actually give it up to the tight ends a ton. They give up 30% more points to opposing tight ends than the average tight end would score against them. On top of that, they've got the best matchup in the league in Week 17. They play the Cincinnati Bengals, who also give it up to opposing tight ends. It's just going to be a situation where Travis Kelce can clearly win you your championship if you make it there. That Week 17 matchup should be just a movie for him. I really do think he could easily put up a really high-end performance there. He can obviously do that any week. And Travis Kelce is just going to be a big-time difference maker for you guys on your rosters. And if he happens to be cheap at this point because of two straight bad weeks, now's the time to at least ask and see what the manager wants for him, because I don't think he's going to be cheaper than what he is right now. Next, I want to bring up a player who I did talk about last week as well, but I just want to bring him up again. That's going to be Jonathan Taylor. The takeover finally happened for Jonathan Taylor this last week. We saw Zach Moss only play 21% of the snaps, and that's just fantastic because there were some concerns that we could see a situation here in Indy where it just ended up being a 50-50 timeshare. That's just not going to be the case going forward. Jonathan Taylor is very clearly going to be the lead back in this offense. this is an offense that needs him because they really don't have too many passer weapons on this offense outside of him and Michael Pittman, especially now that Josh Downs is injured. And Jonathan Taylor is talented enough to finish as a top 5 running back in this role the rest of the season. We've seen him be the running back 1 overall in fantasy before, and what was arguably a worse offense than what they should be than what they're running right now. They've got a Raiders matchup in Week 17 as well. We've seen what the Raiders can do against opposing running backs. They're just really brutal against them. We saw Jahmyr Gibbs and Craig Reynolds put up a monster game against them last week. Saquon Barkley was in line for a huge game before Daniel Jones went out. I think that could easily be a championship winning performance there in Week 17. It's definitely someone that I want to target on my roster for the playoffs, but also just for the upcoming stretch, I think he's going to be matchup proof with that role and that talent. So Taylor's definitely a running back 1 that I want on my roster. I'm willing to pay low end running back price tag for him for sure. And if you can get him on your roster, I think now is going to be like your last chance to potentially sort of buy low on him because his value is obviously going to skyrocket here from this point on. Next, we've got sort of a lesser name here, and that's going to be Zay Flowers. And I think that Zay Flowers might just be basically free at this point. He led the team in routes run in Week 9, but saw only 1 target in a game where Seattle really just destroyed Seattle. It's not one that I'm really going to put too much stock in. This passing game just really ran through Mark Andrews, and they just ran the ball a ton. We saw Lamar Jackson finish the game with only 187 passing yards, and they still scored 37 points on the Seattle Seahawks. The good news here is that the Ravens play some elite offenses here down the stretch. They're going to play teams like the Dolphins, the Bills at some point. It's going to require them to throw the ball a lot more than what they've done lately, and I think that that's going to be really good for Zay Flowers as well because he's very clearly the number 2 target in this offense behind Mark Andrews. He's a guy that's obviously very talented. Even his 1 catch this last week made Devon Witherspoon just absolutely broke his ankles, got him on his knees, and Zay Flowers is just a really talented player. He can do a lot with the ball in his hands in open space, and he's a guy that's going to have some high-end performances down the stretch. And even though I don't think he's necessarily a must-start anymore, like this week against the Cleveland Browns, I'm probably not starting Zay Flowers. I still think he's a top 30 wide receiver the rest of the season, a guy that we can be playing and can be excited about. And if you can get him on the really cheap, I think he's definitely someone that I'd be targeting, especially in PPR formats. Next player I'll bring up here is going to be Kyren Williams. He was a top 5 running back in fantasy when healthy. He had a really elite role in this offense. He was given effectively all of the snaps in this Rams offense out of the backfield, and the Rams offense just looked absolutely awful last week. And the Rams on top of that signed Carson Wentz, so I think you could easily convince Kyren Williams managers that maybe the Rams don't believe Matthew Stafford is healthy, and that maybe that thumb injury is going to linger through their bye that they're on this week. But my belief in that is they really just saw enough out of Brett Ripien that they know they never want to have to see him play quarterback for them again. They obviously looked elsewhere and just thought that it'd be better to have a better backup than Brett Ripien there. I still think Stafford's going to come back in Week 11. The coaching staff has said they're pretty confident he'll be able to return, and that's also going to mean that Kyren Williams will return in Week 11. He's going to be a great asset for those teams who are really in a position where they can eat this one bad week, and then Kyren Williams should be a guy that can easily be a top 10 running back down the stretch. I think he's a guy that's easily a running back 1 the rest of the season. I don't think he's going to cost you that right now just because he obviously doesn't have that high name value associated with him. It's been a while since we've seen him perform, and on top of that, this Rams offense just looked really bad this week. There's sort of a stench surrounding the Rams at the moment right now, so I think it's a good time to buy low on a lot of Rams players, but Kyren Williams is definitely one that I'd be targeting if I can afford to eat one bad week. Next up, we got another running back here, and it's going to be Bijan Robinson, who sort of continues to find his way onto lists like this season. I know it's been awful so far this season, but I think that perhaps Arthur Smith finally learned his lesson this week. They just lost to a backup quarterback for the 2nd straight week in a row. We saw them just have a really awful sequence on the goal line. They had a pass attempt to Jonnu Smith, an end around to Jonnu Smith, and then negative rush attempt by Tyler Algier before they kicked the field goal despite getting the ball on the 1 yard line. They had lost the game at the end to the Minnesota Vikings. The Falcons did not play well this last week. I think it finally bit him in the ass that he hasn't been utilizing his best players, and I think sooner or later this is going to be a Falcons team that needs to start rattling off some wins, and if they want to do that, especially if you're Arthur Smith, he's coaching for his job right now. If they don't make the playoffs, I think there's a real shot that he'll lose his job here, and they do need to start rattling off some wins, and if they have any sense in them, the way to do that is going to be get Bijan, get Jonnu Smith, get Bijan, get Drake London, get Kyle Pitts involved in this offense, and they've got a really elite fantasy playoff schedule. They play Carolina, who just always gives it up to opposing running backs, Indianapolis, who can get beat on the ground as well, and then Chicago, who are very beatable on the ground. So 3 really great matchups for the fantasy playoffs. Bijan Robinson hopefully sees that peak volume as well during that stretch. So you're going to see some peak matchups with a potentially higher usage rate at that point in the fantasy playoffs, and he's never going to be cheaper than he is at this point. He's coming off of his worst game of the season outside of Headache Gate, and I really do still buy the talent. Bijan Robinson is very clearly an elite running back. He needs to be more involved in this offense, and I have to believe they're going to utilize him more than they have so far. So I'm willing to pay a low-end running back 1 price tag for Bijan. I really do think he could be a high-end performer and potentially a league winner here down the stretch. Next up here, I just wanted to go over a list of players that I'd be looking to target if I've got a really good record. So if I'm 6-3 or better, these are players that I'm definitely looking to get on my roster because I can eat a bad week or two before they come back and be like true difference makers for me. So it's a really good spot to be in if you're a fantasy manager. Obviously, I'll start with the big three wide receivers: Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and Cooper Kupp. Jefferson and Jamar Chase are both a little banged up. Jamar Chase has expressed some concern that he could miss Week 10. Jefferson could potentially miss Week 10 as well, but he will return at some point. Cooper Kupp's coming off of a couple bad games in a row. There's obviously concerns surrounding the quarterback position in LA, and obviously Stafford was banged up on top of the fact that this is the bye week for Los Angeles. So all three of those wide receivers are guys that could easily be top 5 wide receivers once they return, and I don't think they're going to cost you that exactly right now. Jamar Chase might not exactly be cheap, but I think you can kick the tires on him. But those are guys that could easily be just league-winning assets, and it's worth kicking the tires on to see how expensive they are. Next, I've got Devon Achane and Kyron Williams. These are guys who are both going to miss this week due to the byes that their teams are on, but in Week 11, they should both return from injury, and they're going to be guys that we saw be top 10 running backs before their injuries. They're guys that I definitely think can be top 10 running backs after they return as well, so it's worth kicking the tires on them. Then I'll mention two Cardinals as well. Marquise Brown and James Conner are guys that I would consider kicking the tires on. I don't think I'm super confident in them this week, given it being Kyler Murray's first week back, but Kyler Murray is going to elevate this offense when he returns. He's just much better than what they've been rolling out so far, and I think they'll at least return to the value that Joshua Dobbs is providing, and obviously there's a lot more ceiling there with Kyler Murray at the helm, so those are guys that should definitely be potential league winners, guys that could easily exceed what they've been doing so far this season. And then one who I really do want to highlight is going to be DeAndre Swift. I just want to bring up his playoff schedule here. He's a guy that I definitely want to be getting on my fantasy rosters right now. In the fantasy playoffs, DeAndre Swift is going to play the. Sorry, I'm pulling it up right now. He's going to play the New York Giants, the Seattle Seahawks, and the Arizona Cardinals. So those are 3 straight very high-end performances, 3 straight really just great matchups for opposing running backs, and especially that Week 17 performance against the Arizona Cardinals. DeAndre Swift could easily be a guy that wins you your league and just sort of carries you through the fantasy playoffs. So I do want to get DeAndre Swift on my roster right now, and it's coming off of sort of 2 straight mediocre weeks, and on top of that, they've got their bye this week. So now is a great time to target DeAndre Swift. I really do want to get him on my rosters right now if I can. And lastly, I just wanted to go over some players that I've been looking to target if I've got a really bad record. A lot of these players are players that are already through their bye, players that I think are poised for a really great next couple weeks, and players that I think are really just going to help you win right now. Because obviously, if you're 3-6 or worse, or if you're 4-5, and you probably need to start winning out. You really want to make sure that you don't lose any more games the rest of the way. And these are guys that are really going to help get you a win this week. And sometimes that's just all you can do. Is if you're 3-6, you got to focus on winning this week and getting forward. So I'll start things off with Breece Hall, who's got a matchup against the Las Vegas Raiders this week. Could easily put up a monster performance, and I do want to get him for sure. Tony Pollard's on this list as well. He's a guy that I talked about earlier as a guy that's got a really great next month. His schedule was really soft here, and a guy that I think is going to return some good value over the next month. Alexander Madison is someone that I would target as well. They play the New Orleans Saints this week, which obviously isn't great, but they should see just elite usage with Cam Akers going down on IR to the Achilles injury. And then the next 2 weeks, they play Denver and Chicago. So 2 great matchups there for Alexander Madison. I think over the next 3 weeks, Alexander Madison is going to be a really high-end running back too for you guys, and someone that definitely I want on my roster. After that, we've got DK Metcalf. He's got a really great matchup this week against the Washington Commanders. Could easily break out of his slump and put up a best performance of his season. DeAndre Hopkins is another player that I want to get on my roster. They've got a really great matchup this week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they have a decent matchup against Jacksonville next week. Top of that, the Titans are through their bye, so DeAndre Hopkins with Will Levis could easily be a high-end performer for you down the stretch. Amon-Ra St. Brown, obviously not going to come cheap, but they're through their bye at this point. They've got a matchup against the Chargers, the Bears, and the Packers over the next 3 weeks. Those 3 defenses that don't scare you. And then obviously Amon-Ra is just an elite player, so you can definitely target him. And then Brandon Ayuk as well. Just wanted to touch on him as well. They're coming off of their bye, obviously. He's a player that's been elite. He's had a 29% target share over the first 9 games of the season. They have matchups against Jacksonville, Tampa Bay, Seattle, Philadelphia, Seattle, Arizona, Baltimore, and Washington over the next 7 games here. All of those outside of Baltimore are plus matchups for opposing wide receivers. Ayuk's down or set up for a really nice second half of the season. He's definitely someone that I want to get on my roster, and I think could be a huge contributor for you guys down the stretch. So that'll do it for this week's Buy Low video. Up next, or at least today as well, you guys will have gotten the Sell High video where I've gone over players that I've been looking to sell high on. As always, if you guys have any specific start sit or trade questions, feel free to let me know in the comments. I love helping you guys make those trades, helping you guys get as set up as possible to really field the best roster as possible in Week 10 and then going forward as well. Thursday morning, you guys will get the Thursday Night Football primer, where I'll preview the really unfortunate matchup between the Bears and the Panthers. The NFL just doesn't want to give us good games on Thursday Night Football, but we'll take what we can get, I guess. And then Saturday morning, you guys will get the Start and Sit video, where I'll go over every single matchup in Week 10, go over which players should and shouldn't be in your fantasy lineups, and make sure that you guys are as set as possible to really dominate this week and then going forward as well. So if you want to make sure you get access to all that, all you've got to do is just subscribe to the channel. That'll help me help you and help make sure that you don't miss anything going forward. So really appreciate all the support. I really appreciate how much the channel is growing. It's been super cool watching this community grow, and it's been a lot of fun for me as well. So thank you guys so much for watching these videos. It means a lot to me, and really cool, and really just blows my mind that many of you guys watch this stuff. So really appreciate it. And with that being said, I'll just catch you next time. Thanks. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.